today we have two realtors, and we're just going to be asking each other questions about the profession and also about crazy stories that we have being in real estate.
Yeah, so on the hot seat right now is Danille McElroy, and I'm excited to ask you some questions because you have a great insight on real estate and a lot of different experiences. So, one question I wanted to ask you, and you have not seen this question ahead of time. We know you were a school teacher. So, what originally sparked your interest into getting into real estate, and how did that evolve? Because it's not every day a school teacher turns into a real estate investor.
Yeah, so initially, I don't think it was really a thought in my mind. I thought I was going to be a school teacher and continue to be a school teacher, but I did not like teaching and I did not make any money. So then I shifted and I really tried to be in jobs that I made more money because I wanted to just buy a condo. Like if I could just buy and pay off a condo, then like I wouldn't have a mortgage and I wouldn't have that stress. And at the time, condos in Scottsdale were about $150,000. So it wasn't too out of reach to do that, right? So then I just started saving and saving and saving over probably 4 or 5 years. And I ended up buying a condo just about with cash. And then I realized that, I should be trying to help other people do the same thing, right? Like, because then from there, I wanted to upgrade to a house and I was going to sell my house, but Ken convinced me, because at the time we had just started dating, to rent my condo to buy my house, which wasn't really my plan. My plan was to sell my condo and then upgrade to my house. But I listened to him for once, which I normally don't. And so then I ended up, having a house and a rental property and then accumulating more rental properties. And that's kind of where my passion came for also teaching other people how to do this.
And I think it's important to note that you were a teacher. You were a single woman at the time that you bought your condo. So it wasn't that you inherited a bunch of money or had a rich uncle. Like you literally worked and saved and were really scrappy. And that should empower people to be like sitting that are listening or watching right now to be like, I can do that too. You didn't get a head start above anybody, nor did I. And we really worked hard to be able to get our first and then second or third property. So
yeah, it feels overwhelming when you have nothing, right? Like when you're starting with, $0, but it really is doable to save money. You just have to make those sacrifices. Like I lived in so I had started a business after I was a teacher, and the business was actually doing pretty well. Like I was making 6 figures, but I was still living like I was making like 30 grand a year. So I was like, drove a 10-year-old car and lived in this condo that had cockroaches. And I think my friends thought I wasn't doing that great because nothing was really progressing as far as getting a nicer place or a nicer car. But in truth, I was just pocketing all my money, which is how I was able to save like $30,000+ a year to then, end up buying my condo in cash. And I do think it can be done. I just think a lot of people, those are big sacrifices because as people make more money, they want to have a nicer lifestyle. And I get that. You just need to see the bigger picture because now at 40 some years old, I have a really nice lifestyle, and I would even if I didn't have Ken. So like, that's kind of the sacrifice you make when you're younger to have success when you're older, because most people don't just make really, because no matter how much you make, like you could be a doctor making 250 grand a year, you're going to have this like crazy lifestyle and most people spend most of their money. So, you really have to be disciplined to not spend the max amount of your money so that you can buy a home and then invest in real estate.
delayed gratification.
What?
Delayed gratification.
Exactly.
Yep. Another question for you, Danille.
Well, no, let me ask you something. I'm not on the only one on the hot seat here.
Yeah. Okay.
So I know you come from a small town and not really a lot of people do real estate and investing specifically up there. And I want to know, how did you get into it? Because I don't think that you probably knew anyone else that was doing it.
Not really. I mean, the thing that flipped the switch for me was I was working after college. I got my first job and I didn't get my college paid for. I took out loans. So I made a payment, a decent sizable payment because I'd been saving in December. And had I made that payment on my student loans and the interest in January, it would have totally affected me different with my taxes because it was going to be in a year that I would be working for 12 months. So I was so mad at myself. Like it was going to save me like $2,000, which was a lot of money, 15 years ago. And I was
To
so
pay that to
ticked off.
taxes, right?
Yes, yes. And so it just set me on this path of, okay, nobody's going to help me. I'm a small fish in a big pond. These CPAs and tax advisors are not going to take the time to teach me how to save $1,000. So it just made me dive into learning about, you know, everything under the sun when it came to money and finances and planning ahead. So that was really a turning point for me. But then also rewind a little bit in high school, my uncle was selling half of this acreage. It was taken down by a tornado in 1992. So it was like this, it was a plot of land. There was just a well there. There's no sewer, no buildings. It's like, I'm selling, and I had this, dream that real estate's great. So I was like, yeah, I'll buy your half of this rundown acreage for $8,000. And I was working for $7 an hour at the time. I didn't know what I was doing. My name didn't even get on title. I literally handed him like $8,000 in cash. And I'm like, okay, I own this land, and
That's
knowing
awesome.
what I know now, I would never do that. But I'm so glad I did because, fast forward, 10 years, my dad and I, who owned the property halvesies, I was never on title, but I still owned it. We sold it for $40,000. So my $8,000 investment turned into $20,000. I was like, wow, like this is really cool. I didn't really do anything. I watered some trees there, but literally, you guys, it's like a half an acre. Like it's nothing crazy, but it just worked because time was added into the mix. So, a couple little things that happened to me along the way of how I got started, and then it just snowballed from there.
Yeah, I think that that's awesome. I think that that's how all of us start. We just kind of fall into it. Like some of these young people now with YouTube, you're able to actually start with a plan. But, we're both a little older than that, and there was no YouTube. And unless you knew somebody doing it, you weren't going to do it. You just wouldn't know how. Like we both kind of just stumbled into it, saw our results on our own, and then realized it's a good investment.
Well, and I think we both had, motivations, and we both had goals, but we were both single. We both had, hardworking jobs, not paying a lot, but we were still scrappy enough to like really have a vision and have a goal and then take action. We didn't wait, no analysis paralysis. Like I'm assuming you did your research, and so did I a bit, and that's how you learn. And by sitting on the sidelines, you're not going to gain anything. So yeah, we're here to take action.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, right? Is people to take action. You're going to make mistakes, you're going to get wins. You just got to do something, right? But I
Yeah.
did want to ask you some questions. We're both realtors, and I think people have a lot of questions about, what we do and how things work and our craziest stories. So I kind of wanted to break some of that down for the audience by just asking each other some questions too. So, how long into a showing do you know it's a no?
Some clients where they're hard on their sleeve, and I can tell like when we first set like one foot in the door, it's like, oh, these photos, this house is photoshopped and it looks horrible and it smells, and or the neighbors to the property look like crap. So it's like sometimes it could be as quick as, hey, I don't even want to go in the house. I've had clients show up to a property, look around, and be like, yep, nope, I'm good. I don't like this neighborhood. I don't like the neighbors. So it could be that quick, which is crazy, but okay, well, at least we took the time and looked.
Yeah, it's that same with me. I kind of know most people right away. Sometimes people are hard to read, but
Yeah.
for me it's harder to read if it's a yes sometimes than a no. Like I feel like I
Yeah.
kind of know when it's a no, but when it's a yes, some clients I can tell right away, and other clients I'm like, I'm not sure they liked it, and then we get back and
Yeah.
they want to put an offer in. But you bring
Yeah.
up a good point on the neighbor's house. Like it's so important. Like I was showing a client this weekend, and, dogs were barking at the neighbors, and he's like, that's it. Like I can't live next to yappy dogs. And I'm like, okay, all right. We don't even have to go in then. But I actually had a client one time that their neighbors didn't take care of their yard at all. Like there was trash in it, there was crap in it, everything was overgrown. And I told
Yeah.
them, if your neighbors will let you tend to their yard while your house is for sale, no matter what it costs, it's in your best interest. And he did. He hired a landscaper. He offered to pay to have their trees cut, their grass cut. and their deal was they would keep the trash out of the yard. That was, and
Yep.
it helps so much. And I really don't know why more people don't do that, because I literally pull up to houses sometimes and I'm like, oh, hell no, there's just no way. Like, even for a rental, like, I don't want to be next to that because it's going to detract renters too.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I, it's just crazy to know that that does make such a difference, but it really does,
Yeah.
pretty crazy. Yeah. So what's your personal red flag when walking into a house? Like, what's something that's like red flag done?
You know, so obviously if the neighbor's house looks like crap, that's a big one for me.
Yeah.
Another one is if there looks like there's water damage or foundation issues. Like, for me, like, I don't want to deal with, especially the foundation, but even water, I'm like, like, I don't know if I want to dig into that, because even in an inspection, you can't tear apart anything. So you don't really know what's beyond that water damage, So I think for me, those are the big ones. The area too, like if I'm like pulling up to an area to go check out a house and it's kind of a rundown area and I don't know it that well, I'm like, I don't want to be around that either. Like, I want pristine areas that people want to live. I don't want to deal with crime. I don't want to deal with like bad tenants. Like, so I'm kind of
Yeah.
picky on that kind of stuff. The weird layouts too. Like, I've seen some weird layouts where they've turned it into almost like a multifamily and the kitchen's, kind of on the side and you have a locked door to get to the other part of it. Anything weird like that, it's just going to be too hard to rent and too hard to sell. I want a more traditional setup, personally, for me.
Yeah.
So let's ask you, this is a good one. What's the most unrealistic expectation a buyer or seller has?
I had clients once that they were literally stuck in 1980. They hadn't monitored the market. They hadn't been watching things, buy and sell. And they were wanting to upgrade and they were just sticker shocked. It's kind of like when dad goes to buy a gallon of milk and he hasn't went shopping for a while and it's double what they expect. Kind of that same thing where it's like, okay, they were unrealistic with that. So they wanted to lowball, which is fine if it's warranted, but obviously in this case it wasn't. They wanted this, in addition to the low offer, they wanted the seller to pay for all of the closing costs. They wanted them to leave all of the furniture. It was request after request after request. And, at the end of the day, I get it. A seller can't say no to an offer that they don't have, but it was like truly a completely insulting offer because those buyers were so out of touch. So it was a little uncomfortable, but believe me, I'm all for throwing out offers out there and seeing what'll happen. But when it's like 1% of the value, it's like there's no way that this will even fly. So
yeah, and I get that too. I see that, with buyers right now, we'll make a low offer and it'll get accepted, after some negotiation. But then, we do the inspection and they want these outrageous, additional things taken off that are silly. They're not big. It's like an extra $8,000 or something. And then they want, the closing to be, extended, and they want furniture and and it's like, if you get a low offer accepted, just be super happy that you got it accepted. You can't, like, a seller usually is not desperate, right? And you also piss them off too when you start nickel and diming the inspection. And
yeah,
you want them on your side because you don't want to get cocky as the buyer, because you might have to delay closing because your loan didn't go through on time. You might have to, do something else with there's things that can happen even if you feel like everything's together. And if you piss them off, they might say, okay, you can delay closing, but now I want hard money up, or now, I want this or that. When if you're just easygoing with them, they might have just said, okay, right? So there is, I had that with one of my buyers recently. She considered nickel and diming this lady. We're getting the best deal ever. And I said, listen, it's up to you, but we're getting a good deal. And I don't think we should, nickel and dime this little thing, like for an extra $500, right?
yeah,
When luckily we didn't, because her loan didn't close on time. So then we actually ended up having to extend it like 4 days. And the ladies husband that had passed used to be a realtor, and she was really understanding. But when you start nickel and diming people, and they had backup offers, we were not the only offer. So you just got to be careful, because you don't know, you don't want to act all cocky, because you might, come on your knees begging them to, give you an extra day or two to close the thing,
Exactly.
which they don't have to do, by the way.
No, they don't have to extend. And the most recent one I had was a client. I represented the buyer. The listing was, by another brokerage. And the buyer says, hey, I want to offer 150, and it was listed at 220. And I felt like the listing was a little bit high, but not much. Like maybe it would be around 200, 205. They wanted to offer 150. And I was like, you're going to insult this seller. They're not going to counter offer. Like it was just listed on the market. It wasn't a stale listing, no black mark on it. I said, I understand. We want to try to negotiate the best deal, but if you start that low, they're going to get, pissed off, and they're not going to want to counteroffer. They're going to be disgusted.
Yeah.
So we need to start, a little bit more competitive, or a little bit more closer to reality. And they ended up coming down and counteroffering, but I think they made an offer around 175 or 180 instead of that 150. It made all the difference. But you don't want to offend somebody if it's a brand new listing, especially.
Correct. You can't, on a brand new listing, you got to let it marinate for a while. And if you're not okay with it marinating for 30 or 60 days, then you need to offer what they're going to counter on, and if you're okay with waiting and seeing and it sits there, then yeah, you have more negotiation room. But, yeah, I think that, people buyers are, they're able to negotiate right now, but they also have to realize most sellers aren't desperate. Most.
Yeah. Yeah. So, question for you, Danille. What's the one mistake that you see new agents making?
So I'm going to kind of flip this question a little bit, and I'm actually dealing with this right now. I think that the mistake is on the person that hires the new agent that doesn't know what they're doing. I see them making a ton of mistakes that are costing their clients money, and you shouldn't hire someone that's brand new. Of course, this is a uncle of the girl buying it, of course, because I always say that, because if it's a family member or friend, this is typically always when it happens. But you're going to laugh at this. So we had our 10-day inspection, and they wanted a $10,000 credit, and it was warranted. But instead of putting the $10,000 credit on the Binzer, which in Arizona is like after the 10 days, the demands that the buyer wants fixed, he put everything's totally fine. And he put an addendum on another sheet to lower the price by $10,000, which we had agreed to lower the price, but he sent them separately. So explain to me what I didn't do it because it's not the right thing to do, but he put his client in a very bad situation, because if we would have signed the Binzer saying everything's fine and refused to sign the addendum, dropping the price 10 grand, his client would have been out $10,000. And these are the mistakes that are being, these little things happen. And it's from an inexperienced agent, and you can totally get screwed over on it. Like, I just don't do that. But at the same time, like, totally would be within my rights to do it.
Yeah. Another agent might not have taken the same path that you did.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is, it's those little mistakes. It's like, people think anyone can be a realtor. People think anyone, their uncle, their best friend, can just do the paperwork. But the truth is, it's more complicated than that. These are all legal documents. And if they're done wrong, you're putting yourself at risk, because at the end of the day, if we would have refused to sign addendum 3, switching the price, they would have then be locked in and would have to lose their $8,000 earnest deposit to get out of the contract. So you just have to, I don't know. I mean, it's just those kind of things where I get frustrated when people are like, oh, it's like the easiest job in the world. Yeah, showing houses is easy, but making sure the negotiation is correct, the negotiation goes well, and handling all the paperwork, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah. Details. I think the one mistake that new agents make is exactly along those lines of the details, where whether it's maybe they missed the inspection deadline, like, hey, that was last night at midnight, not tonight. So we don't have to do anything. You didn't send over a cancellation, you know?
Yeah.
So I've seen that go in different people's favors, which is huge. The other one that I see is people like agents forgetting to put in some of the personal property. So appliances, I know it might vary from state to state, but here typically appliances stay, but we always write them into the personal property just so there's not any question. And if somebody forgets to write in the appliances or even like LP in the tank, that's something else that buyers typically pay the seller for unless it's written into the personal property agreement that the LP stays, which could be, $1,000 worth of a cash or check at closing. So those are things that add up.
They do add up. And you're right, because like in Arizona, we have to put the fridge, the washer, and the dryer because those typically don't have to stay. So we put those into the contract, and I have seen new agents forget to put those. They also don't describe them, so they can be swapped out. So if you just say washer, and there was a nice stainless steel washer there, and the seller decided they want to take that, so they're just going to get this old white janky washer on, on Craigslist, and they put it in there, then that's the washer because it just said washer. It didn't say stainless steel Whirlpool washer. It just said washer. So, I've seen that too of, they're not being specific on the washer and dryer because you assume that the seller is a good person and they'll leave the right stuff, but you should never assume anything.
Yeah. That's what I would say, as seen at showing or as seen at listing photos or, at time of showing, or like you say, exact or close depictions of it. So, or descriptions, I should say. Yeah.
Yep. So what's the worst real estate decision you've ever made? And what did it teach you?
Oh, that's a good one. I would say not taking risks sooner. So I wish that I would have started my real estate journey a little bit sooner as far as like the multifamily or single family homes that I have. And I don't think anybody ever feels like 100% ready. Like there's always another podcast to listen to or another book to read or, another mentor to consult with. But if you really, do your homework, I think that's probably, kind of cliche, but like not starting sooner would be, I would say, a mistake that I made.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd say mine is investing on those. I did a couple cuts. I did I mean, that's all I could afford to buy at the time. But I bought a secondary condo in 2020, which I'm going to be selling in the spring, and I'll make money on it. It's not a huge mistake, but I, in hindsight, I should have been a little more and bought a single family house, because I have this low interest rate, but I have these climbing HOA fees, and I don't want to let go of this loan because it's so cheap, but it's not making me that much money even at a 2.8% interest rate because the HOA fee, right? So if I would have bought a single family house, I wouldn't have had to worry about that.
Yep. Merry Christmas.